We're going to move on to questions for our challengers. Each of you also picked a number out of an envelope, and again, those numbers correspond to questions. Each of you will have 2 minutes to answer the question, and then when we are finished with all 4 questions, each of you will again have a minute to respond or add anything that you'd like to. So the first number is Mr. Barnes, and your question: what kinds of programs would you propose to attract students to Portsmouth Public Schools, and how would you fund those programs?
Some of the programs that I would attract to Portsmouth Public Schools is definitely more vocational and technical programs. Like I said earlier, Portsmouth and Virginia, cybersecurity and unarmed man systems is 2 of the emerging industries in in Virginia. We need to make sure our kids are prepared for the 21st century, so we need to make sure those programs are placed in our schools so we can make sure our kids get the skill sets necessary to perform those programs, in those industries. What was the second part of the question again?
How would you fund these programs?
Well, as far as funding, I'll make sure that we look at the budget, make sure we can free up the money necessary to do those things. I think with those programs, we had, when I was going to school and I was in high school, we had different programs such as auto mechanics, nursing, and they had that at the old Craddock. I think that the funding may be still available, I'm not exactly sure, but we need to make sure we look at the budget and make sure we cut things that we don't need in order to fund those programs.
Number 2 is Ms. Allen, and you also have a 2-part question. What would you propose to make the school board's budget and spending more transparent to taxpayers, and what would be your spending priorities?
I'm going to answer it a little bit backwards. A spending priority for me are what's going on inside the classroom. That is our line staff. They are the hands-on to our students. We have to make sure that they have the resources they need inside the classrooms first to make sure that our students are getting the proper education that they need. The second portion of the question was, rephrase that again, please?
The first part was, how would you propose to make the school board's budget and spending more transparent to taxpayers?
I think it's important that we encourage our citizens to take a look at the budget that's it is posted online, our school system's budget, but I think it's important that quarterly we have some more discussions about where the funds are going. I think if there's anybody who has any questions about where dollars are being spent, we owe it to the taxpayers to make it available to them. So as far as it being transparent, I think if someone is saying that they're asking and they're not getting that information, then that's a problem. But we also need to encourage people, come see what we're doing.
Okay. Number 3 goes to Ms. Clark. Besides increasing salaries, what would you do to attract and retain talented teachers in Portsmouth?
Thank you. I understand the mayor just announced that we just hired 130 new teachers. Of that, he mentioned that a great deal of them had over 10 years experience. Doing the calculation of approximately what we hire a new teacher and what we would have experienced teachers, that's about a $6 million ticket. We also just the council already approved a bond for $6 million in building and maintenance funds. We have a lot of money that we have invested in these schools. So I think it's paramount that we utilize what we have in the best way and maybe reformulate how we use it. For example, our administrative staff is way over 30 people. The superintendent's cabinet has over 11 in its staff. So when they retire, hopefully we will have some openings there and we can save some money.
Our last question for our challengers goes to Ms. Atkinson. In your view, what are the biggest challenges facing the school district, and what ideas do you have for dealing with them?
Well, the biggest challenge right now, I guess you guys have seen the Collett article, is suspensions. The reason why suspensions is a big issue is because when a student is out of school, that affects funding. So we have to find a way to tackle that. As parents, as retirees that's willing to volunteer for after school suspension and school suspension, we have to utilize the people who's willing to volunteer. We can do parent resource centers in the school. We can do family after-school suspensions. Community service is several organizations that's willing to provide those alternatives. And like I said, with that funding that's lost, we can't give teachers competitive pay. If we were to calculate those numbers, we could at least give the teachers a stipend for their classroom, something just to say thank you, great job. So I think we need to stop putting the suspension issue under the rug and really dig deep into that and address that.
Now each of you, if you'd like it, can take 1 minute to respond to anyone's answers or add to something if you thought of it after. Do we have anything additional? Ms. Clark?
I'd like to respond to an earlier response to my answer, and this is about suspensions. When I talked about a particular school that had a 59% suspension rate, these were numbers that came directly from the Department of Education. Of the 1,343 students in that school, 888 were listed as being suspended for behavioral issues. I understand that the superintendent.
We can pause on your time, it's okay.
Sure, okay.
Go ahead.
I understand that the superintendent is developing policy now, but in the beginning, when I addressed this issue, he explained that this was a coding issue that was a problem in the way that these suspensions were done, and that some were repeat offenders. I still think it is a very big issue about behavioral situations, and that is possibly why our enrollment's going down.
Ms. Atkinson?
I wanted to answer the question about programs in the schools. We don't have to depend on a budget to bring programs in schools. There are several nonprofits that already have grants in place to work with the school systems. So why aren't we inviting the nonprofits into the schools who already have the funding? I'm not sure why we haven't went in that direction, but that can definitely help with that portion of the budget. We need more nonprofits that focus on entrepreneurship. We're teaching students how to work 9-to-5s and work for a corporation, but we aren't teaching them to be successful business owners and entrepreneurs. So what about those students outside who don't want to do college, who don't want to work in a shipyard, who don't have their apprenticeship, who really want to start their nonprofits and open up their own businesses? We need to reach that demographics as well. That's very important to be a successful business owner. I see some business owners here where you.
Good morning.